They laughed when my keycard stopped working. I stood at the glass doors, holding my morning coffee like an idiot, swiping over and over. Beep, beep. Access denied. Behind me, laughter. Snickering. Whispers. My so-called colleagues, watching like vultures. Guess she finally got the boot, someone muttered. I turned around. There they were, Paul from accounting, grinning like it was his birthday. Lisa, who once called me her work sister, pretending not to know me. Even my manager, David, peeked around the corner, then vanished like a coward. I didn't cry.
Not then.
I just froze. Not because I lost the job. Because no one, not a single person, asked if I was okay. The worst part? I helped build that company. I stayed late. I skipped birthdays. I made them money. And they laughed. They laughed while I stood there, humiliated, holding a paper cup like it was all I had left. If you've ever been betrayed by people you trusted, if you've ever been publicly humiliated and had to walk away like it didn't break you, comment I'm still standing below. You're not alone. And this is not how my story ends. My name is Madison Clark, and from the time I was 10, I wanted to run my own business. While other girls played with dolls, I played office. I'd line up notebooks on my bed and pretend they were contracts. I'd walk around my room in my mom's heels pretending to lead meetings. No one took it seriously, except my dad. He'd say, "Maddie, you've got a mind like a CEO. Don't ever shrink it to fit in." But when he died suddenly in my senior year of high school, everything shifted. We didn't have savings. No fancy inheritance. Just me, my mom, and a stack of hospital bills. So I shelved my dreams and went straight to work after community college. I landed a job as a receptionist at Silverstone Marketing, a boutique ad agency in downtown Chicago. It wasn't glamorous. I fetched coffee, ordered toner, answered phones. But I watched everything. I saw how campaigns were pitched, how deals were made. I listened in on calls and studied late at night. My favorite was watching David Reynolds, the company's co-founder, lead strategy meetings. He was sharp, bold, and he noticed me. One day, while I was reorganizing a supply closet, he poked his head in. "You always this organized?" I laughed, half embarrassed. "I guess I like when things make sense." He nodded. "Come to the Monday brainstorm. I want you to sit in." That moment changed everything. From there, I slowly got pulled into meetings. I started offering ideas, quietly at first, then more boldly when they landed well. I got promoted to junior strategist, then full strategist within a year. Every win felt like a step toward the future I once shelved. I gave everything to that company. When we launched the Lakeview real estate campaign and landed a $2.1 million client, I was the lead. I even skipped my best friend's wedding to finish the pitch deck. But I didn't mind. I was building something. And even if it wasn't my company, it felt like it could be, someday. I had a small circle of people I trusted. Lisa Harper, my desk neighbor, who I thought was like a sister. We'd grab coffee, vent about late nights, even spent one Christmas Eve at my place because she didn't want to be alone. Then there was Jared Ellis, the graphic designer with a dry sense of humor and a surprisingly soft heart. And Paul, well, Paul was always two-faced, but I thought I knew how to handle him. Things really started to shift the year I was asked to manage a pitch for a new startup accelerator. I worked overtime for 6 weeks straight, barely sleeping. I saw potential to grow the agency into something bigger, more innovative. I pitched the idea of launching a new division, Silverstone Labs, a creative incubator for digital-first brands. David looked impressed. So did Cynthia Wills, the HR lead. "I see you thinking like an owner, Maddie," David said. "Maybe it's time we talk about equity." I remember the way my heart jumped at that word.
Equity.
Ownership. A seat at the table. But that conversation never happened again. And things started shifting. Suddenly, Lisa was distant. Jared stopped looping me into client meetings. I found out later that Paul, who was supposed to be under my supervision, was going behind my back to take credit for my strategy outlines. But I kept pushing forward. I believed that if I just worked harder, I'd earn my place. I didn't realize there was a game being played, and I was the only one who didn't know the rules. Until the day everything cracked. I was asked to train a new strategist, Emily Rowe, fresh out of an Ivy League school. I gave her everything, templates, frameworks, even introduced her to my own contacts. She smiled a lot, took notes, nodded in meetings. 3 weeks later, she was leading my accounts, and I was being asked to focus on internal workflows. That's corporate speak for, "We're moving you out of the spotlight." I went home that night and stared at the ceiling, wondering if maybe I had been naive. Maybe dreaming big was just another way to set yourself up for disappointment. But I wasn't ready to quit. Not yet. I'd spent 5 years building that place from the inside. It had to mean something, right? What I didn't know, what I couldn't see from inside the fog, was that the decision had already been made. They were just waiting for the right moment to throw me out. Things didn't collapse overnight. It was slow. So slow, it almost felt normal. At first, it was tiny things. Forgettable if you weren't paying attention. Like how my weekly client update was suddenly being handled by Emily, the same Emily I had trained just a few weeks ago. Or how I would walk into Monday meetings to find out decisions had already been made without me. I'd scroll back through Slack to check if I'd missed a message, but no, it wasn't me. I just hadn't been included. Then came the glances. Lisa, my supposed office best friend, started closing her laptop whenever I walked over. Jared, once easygoing and sarcastic, had grown colder. His responses were short, delayed, professional, but cold. It was like I was becoming invisible, but not in a neutral way, in a deliberate way. I tried to rationalize it at first. Maybe I'm imagining it. Everyone's just stressed. There's a big launch next month. But I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't paranoid. Something had shifted, and I wasn't part of the loop anymore. One Thursday morning, I was walking past the conference room when I heard laughter. A kind I knew well. Lisa's snort. Paul's wheeze. Jared's chuckle. My name came up. Maddie thinks she's the only one who ever worked late. I know, right? I guess she's the queen of marketing now. Let her keep thinking that. Makes it easier for us. I froze in the hallway, my hand gripping the corner of the glass. My ears buzzed. My chest burned. I had no words. I just turned and walked back to my desk, trying not to show it. I started documenting everything. Every assignment that got mysteriously rerouted. Every project I started that mysteriously ended up in someone else's hands. Every strategy one built that was presented under someone else's name. The worst betrayal? Lisa. We used to be close. We'd shared holidays. She once stayed over at my place when her apartment flooded. I confided in her, told her about my anxiety, about how hard it was being the only woman in boardroom pitches sometimes. And she used that softness to slit my professional throat with a smile. She started scheduling client calls without inviting me. When I asked about it, she said, "Oh, I assumed you were overloaded. Just trying to help." She wasn't helping. She was cutting me out. I tried to raise concerns to HR, Cynthia, specifically, but Cynthia was a mirror, reflective but useless. "Maddie," she said, "I'm sure there's just some miscommunication. You've always been such a dedicated team member." I walked out of that meeting more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. One Friday afternoon, David called an emergency all-hands. Said it was about shifting roles and embracing a more agile structure. Translation: they were reshuffling the deck, and I was the card they were discarding. Paul was promoted to Director of Client Strategy, a role I had been unofficially performing for the past 6 months. I didn't even get a mention. Not a thank you. Not a footnote. I watched Paul get congratulated. Lisa hugged him. Jared gave him a high five. Emily gave me a smirk. I forced a smile, so tight I felt my jaw lock. When I got back to my desk, I found a sticky note on my screen. "You good?" Jared. Was I good? No. But I wasn't going to break in front of him. The following Monday, I got my first official reprimand. It was an email from David, concerned about delays on the client brief. Only, I hadn't been assigned that client for 2 weeks. Lisa had taken over. I replied with receipts, time-stamped messages, shared documents, everything. But the damage was done. A second email came 2 days later. Missed deadline for the March campaign review. Again, Emily's responsibility. But somehow my name was on the feedback form. I went to David's office. I'm being targeted, I said flatly. People are reassigning work without telling me, and then I'm being blamed for missing it. He didn't even look up from his laptop. Maddie, no one's targeting you. If you're overwhelmed, we can look at redistributing your workload. I stood there, blinking. Redistribute it? They'd already taken everything. I called my mom that night. I feel like I'm disappearing, I told her, holding back tears. Like they're erasing me piece by piece. She said something I'll never forget. Sometimes, when people see you rising, they'll pretend you're falling so they can feel taller. That hit deep. Because I had risen. I had outperformed every quarterly benchmark. I had landed the biggest campaign of the previous year. I had trained 3 people now in leadership roles. And I had done it with integrity. That made me a threat. They didn't want a woman who knew her worth. They wanted someone who stayed grateful forever. Someone who kept her head down. Then came the email that changed everything. I was copied accidentally on a thread between David, Cynthia, and the company's legal advisor. Subject: Employee Transition Strategy, March Offboarding. My name. Bold. Underlined. Color-coded in red. I read it 3 times. My heart thudded, so loud I thought I'd faint. The message discussed a quiet transition plan and non-confrontational exit strategy. It even suggested phrasing. We're restructuring to better align with evolving priorities. I sat at my desk, staring at the screen, unable to move. I wasn't just being left out. I was being removed strategically, silently. Like a smudge they were wiping clean from the whiteboard. I forwarded the email to my personal account. Saved it. Printed it. All of it. Then I closed my laptop and walked out of the office. I didn't quit. Not yet. But I knew the end was coming. And I knew something else, too. I wasn't going to go down quietly. I had built too much. Given too much. Sacrificed too much. They thought they were discarding me. But what they didn't know was that I had already started building something of my own. And the day they threw me out? That would be the day they made their biggest mistake. The day they threw me out started like any other. It was a rainy Tuesday in April. I wore my navy blue blazer. The one I saved for client presentations, because I had a meeting scheduled with Hamilton Realty, a massive account. We'd been courting for months. I had spent 2 weeks perfecting that pitch. I hadn't slept properly in 3 days. I walked in early, as usual. 7:45 a.m. The office was quiet, just the hum of the vending machine and the soft click of my heels echoing on the tile. I remember feeling hopeful. Despite everything, despite the whispering, the gaslighting, the exclusion, I believed that today might be the day I'd remind them who I was. Then I swiped my keycard. Beep. Access denied. I paused, swiped again. Beep. Access denied. I stared at the scanner, confused. Maybe it was malfunctioning. I tried the side door. Nothing. A security guard, Frank, who'd seen me every day for 5 years, walked over. His eyes shifted uncomfortably. I'm gonna need you to wait outside, Madison. I blinked. Wait outside? For what? There's been an update to access lists. I have a client pitch in 30 minutes. Frank didn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry. I'm just following orders. That was when the whispers started. First Lisa and Paul walked in, faces neutral, eyes refusing to meet mine. Then Jared, who did a double take but kept walking like I was invisible. Emily strolled by last. And unlike the others, she did make eye contact. She smiled. Not a warm smile. A smug, polished little smirk that said everything without a word. That's when I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. They had planned this. I called David's office from the sidewalk, standing in the rain with my coffee getting cold in my hand. His assistant picked up. Hi, it's Madison Clark. I'm locked out of the building. Silence. Oh, David meant to speak with you yesterday. We've decided to move forward in a different direction. You'll be getting formal notification in your personal email shortly. That was it. 5 years. 1 million overtime hours. Dozens of successful campaigns. Loyalty, sacrifice, silence. Dismissed in a voicemail. My phone buzzed 5 minutes later with an email from Cynthia in HR. Subject: termination of employment, Silverstone Marketing. It was cold. Legal. 3 paragraphs. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a PDF attachment and a reminder to sign the NDA. I stood outside that building for over 40 minutes. No one came out to talk to me. No one checked in. No one said goodbye. People I had trained, mentored, laughed with, cried with, they walked right past me like I was a stranger. And it wasn't just professional shame. It was personal betrayal. Lisa, Jared, even David. These weren't just co-workers, they were my second family. Or at least, I had fooled myself into believing they were. I sat in my car for 2 hours afterward, soaked and frozen, replaying everything. Every late night. Every canceled weekend. Every time I stepped up when no one else would. I had given my soul to that place. And they had discarded me like garbage. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove aimlessly for hours. Through back streets, industrial parks, downtown loops. I parked in front of the lake and just stared at the water until dusk. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't cry. I couldn't even think. It felt like someone had stolen my identity. Because when your job is your purpose, your community, your pride, and it's yanked away without warning, it doesn't just feel like job loss. It feels like death. I finally broke down on my apartment floor that night. I curled up in the same blazer I had worn, still damp from the rain. My phone buzzed nonstop. Emails from HR, reminders about signing documents, a Slack message from someone named Caitlin who I didn't even know. Hey, just wanted to say best of luck with whatever's next. Smiley face. I nearly threw my phone across the room. Lisa didn't text. Jared didn't text. Paul sent nothing. The silence was deafening. Even the building security deactivated my parking pass within the hour. I had to buzz a stranger to exit the garage. I told my mom the next morning. She was silent for a long time after I finished the story. Then she said, "You always knew how to light a fire in a cold room, Maddie. Maybe it's time to burn your own trail." It didn't feel inspiring in the moment. It felt like failure. Shame. Humiliation. I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, the way they laughed, the way they knew. That smirk on Emily's face haunted me. It still does. The betrayal wasn't just professional. It was spiritual. I had trusted people who saw me as a tool, a ladder, a stepping stone. I gave them loyalty. They gave me silence. I gave them strategy. They gave me exile. I gave them truth. They gave me a locked door. But beneath all that grief, somewhere deep under the rubble, was a spark, a flicker of rage, of pride, of something raw and ancient, a voice that said, "They didn't end you. They freed you." I didn't sign the NDA. I didn't sign the termination letter either. Instead, I made a call to an old college friend, Natalie Brooks, who had just opened her own PR firm in Portland. "Natalie," I said, "I think I'm ready to build something, and I want you with me." She didn't even hesitate. "About time, Maddie. Let's do this." That was the moment the story turned. Not because I had a plan, but because I finally realized they could take everything from me, but they couldn't take me. It took a few months. Months of silence. Of starting from scratch. Of working out of cafes and co-working spaces, building a new identity from pieces of who I used to be and glimpses of who I was becoming. Natalie and I launched our own boutique branding firm, North Alder Strategies. Just 2 women, a borrowed office corner, a 10-year-old iMac, and an absurd amount of grit. We focused on companies led by women and minorities, those who'd been overlooked like I had. People with fire, people with stories. People ready to shake the system. And slowly, we began to grow. 1 client led to 3. 3 led to 10. And then one day, a cold email landed in my inbox. Subject: pitch opportunity, Silverstone rebrand. I stared at the screen for nearly 5 minutes before opening it. It was from Emily. Apparently, Silverstone had taken a reputation hit. Word had gotten out about their toxic environment. A viral Glassdoor review, a leaked Slack thread, and several ex-employees quietly talking to industry contacts. They needed someone to clean it up. Someone respected. Someone with vision. They needed me. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I let it sit for 3 days. I wanted to be sure this wasn't a trigger. I didn't want revenge for the sake of revenge. But then I remembered the look on Emily's face. The silence from Jared. The locked door. The iced-out goodbyes. And I thought, maybe this isn't revenge. Maybe it's closure. So I replied, let's set up a meeting. I walked into their downtown office. Now a different location, sleeker, colder. But the energy? Still the same. Polished, pressured, performative. Emily greeted me in the lobby like we were old friends. Madison. Wow. You look amazing. Thank you so much for coming. I just smiled. Happy to help. Shall we? She led me into a conference room that smelled like fresh paint and lemon polish. Jared was there. So was Lisa. Even David joined via Zoom from some resort-looking background. I took my seat across from all of them. They started the pitch. They talked about rebranding, about market perception, about needing fresh, authentic leadership. And then Emily said the words I never thought I'd hear from her. We think you're the best person to help us turn this around. I paused. I let silence fill the room. And then I spoke. I appreciate the opportunity. But before I talk strategy, let's talk honesty. Their smiles faltered slightly. You fired me in the rain, locked me out of the building, gave away my accounts. Not one of you called me. Not one of you checked in. And now that you're hemorrhaging reputation, you want me to fix the thing you broke. David cleared his throat, voice crackling through Zoom. Madison, we made some missteps, yes, but business is business. I interrupted. No. This was never just business. I gave you loyalty. You gave me exile. Emily shifted uncomfortably. Look, we know things could have been handled better. But they weren't, I said, calm now. And you didn't come here because you believe in me. You came because you need me, because your back is against the wall. Lisa spoke up. We're prepared to offer a generous compensation package. I held up a hand. I'm not interested in your money. Silence. I came here because I needed to look you all in the eyes. I needed to see if you were sorry. If you even understood what you did. They said nothing. I stood up. Thank you for the meeting. I think we're done here. As I walked out of the conference room, I felt light. Not triumphant. Not angry. Just clean. The poison had finally left my body. They had expected me to beg, to bend, to barter. But I didn't need their validation anymore. I had become the person they tried to erase. And the best part? I had done it without them. The next day, I posted on LinkedIn. Just a simple story. Sometimes you get locked out of a door you helped build, only to find the key to your own kingdom. It went viral. Over 800,000 views. Dozens of messages from people who'd been thrown out, overlooked, underestimated. People who saw themselves in my story. And suddenly, I wasn't just rebuilding my life. I was becoming a voice for those who hadn't found theirs yet. I wasn't just running a company anymore. I was leading a movement. When you've been broken down to nothing, rebuilding isn't just an act of creation, it's an act of defiance. After the Silverstone confrontation, something in me shifted. I no longer doubted my value. I no longer questioned whether I deserved a seat at the table. Because I was building the table now, and people were lining up to sit at it. North Alder Strategies exploded almost overnight. That LinkedIn post. It brought in attention from companies I had only ever dreamed of working with. A women-led startup in Austin reached out. Then a sustainable fashion brand out of Seattle. Then a VC firm in Boston looking to rebrand its public narrative. Natalie and I couldn't keep up. We hired our first intern, a fiery communications major named Lena Whitman, who brought us oat milk lattes and million-dollar TikTok ideas. Then came our first account manager, Jules Reyes, a former agency dropout who said he was tired of making rich men richer. Within 6 months, we moved into a real office. Not fancy, but ours. White walls, thrifted furniture, plants in every corner, a fridge stocked with LaCroix and leftover Thai food. It wasn't much, but it was everything. One day, I sat in our small break room, sipping cold coffee, when Natalie walked in with her laptop. "You need to see this," she said. She turned the screen toward me. Silverstone had officially announced their new rebrand. New logo, new slogan, new mission statement. And guess what? It was awful. Tone-deaf, corporate fluff, trying desperately to sound empowering without understanding what that word even meant. Their stock took a hit. Their engagement tanked. And their LinkedIn comments were full of people calling them out. One line in particular made me laugh out loud. "Feels like a knockoff of North Alder Strategies." I never spoke to them again. Not because I was avoiding them, but because they no longer mattered. They had become irrelevant in my world, and I had become undeniable in theirs. 6 months later, I was invited to speak at the National Women in Business Summit in Chicago. I stood on stage in a black power suit, hair pulled back, palms slightly sweaty, but steady. I looked out at a crowd of 2,000 women, some young, some seasoned, all burning with ambition, and I told them my story. I told them about the rain, about the locked door, about the silence and the shame and the unlearning. And then I told them about this, about finding my voice, about choosing creation over retaliation, about not asking for permission to lead. They gave me a standing ovation. But more than that, they gave me tears. After the talk, dozens of women came up to me one by one. "I left my job last week because of you. I'm starting my own firm next month. Wish me luck. Thank you for saying it. Thank you for surviving it." Somewhere along the way, my story stopped being about revenge. It started being about reclamation, about taking back what had been stripped from me, not just power, but identity. And once I had that back, no one could touch me. Not Jared. Not Emily. Not even the part of me that used to doubt herself. A few months later, I got a call from Forbes. They were doing a feature on women entrepreneurs disrupting traditional agency models. I was on the list. They sent a photographer to our office. He took pictures of me in front of a whiteboard covered in Post-it notes, sitting cross-legged on the floor with Lena brainstorming campaign ideas, laughing over lunch with Jules. When the article came out, the headline made me pause. "Thrown out and thriving. How Madison Lane rebuilt better than before." My name, my story, my narrative. Finally told my way. We were just getting started. By the end of year 2, we had a team of 12, a waiting list of clients, and multiple awards under our belt. Natalie and I became co-founders in the truest sense, balancing each other, pushing each other, laughing until midnight over launch deadlines. Our motto? No one gets left out in the rain. It was on our website, on our merch, on the sticky notes we handed to interns on their first day. And we meant it, because I remembered exactly what it felt like to be standing in that storm, wondering who I was now. And once I trusted her, everything changed. I stopped shrinking. I stopped apologizing for my ambition. I stopped waiting for permission. And most of all, I stopped mistaking silence for power. Because real power? It doesn't yell. It doesn't flaunt. It doesn't threaten. Real power is knowing who you are, what you're here to do, and refusing to let anyone shrink your light just because they can't handle the brightness. I've learned that people will often misunderstand you when you're rising. They'll call you too much, too sensitive, too ambitious, too intense. But what they're really saying is, I don't know how to hold space for someone who refuses to dim herself. And that's okay. Let them go. Not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. Because the more you grow, the less you fit where you once folded yourself to fit in. And that's not your fault. That's your becoming. When Silverstone asked me for help, I didn't say yes to prove I'd won. I said yes to prove to myself that I no longer needed to. And that's the greatest shift of all. Because I'm no longer trying to be chosen. I am the chooser now. I choose my values. I choose my pace. I choose my circle. I choose myself. Even when others don't. Especially then. So, if you've ever been laughed out of a room, If you've ever been told you were too much, or not enough, or not the right fit, let me say this. You don't need their table. You don't need their title. You don't need their crumbs. You are allowed to build something better. To rise anyway. To become so undeniable, they have no choice but to whisper your name in rooms they once locked you out of. But even then, even when they finally call you back, you'll realize you no longer need to answer. Because the version of you who needed them, she's long gone. And the version standing here now, she's unstoppable. So what about you? Have you ever been laughed at, shut out, or underestimated? Have you ever walked away from something you gave your all to, only to realize later that the loss was actually your liberation? If you have, I want to hear your story. Drop a comment below that says, "They didn't break me." Because when you say that, when you own that, you're not just telling your truth. You're showing others that they can survive it too. And not just survive, thrive. This isn't just my story. It's yours. It's every woman who's ever been called too much. Every girl who is told to stay quiet, be nice, or know her place. It's every dreamer who is told her vision was too big. Every underdog who got thrown out before she had the chance to show what she was made of. And now we're the ones building. Now we're the ones hiring. Now we're the ones sitting at the head of the table, or building new ones entirely. So, if this story reminded you of your strength, if it lit a fire in you, if it whispered, "You're not alone," hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories like this. And share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that just because they were counted out, doesn't mean they're out for good. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's reinvention. And it's ours.